Howdy hi. So, throwback to the 13 Reasons Why video, my dog wants a cuddle. So, here she is. Sorry that I haven't uploaded in a month. But it was Christmas. Not that when it's not Christmas, I upload more than once a month. We're gonna try to do something about that in 2020. We'll see. Today I want to talk about you. Not me, but you. Season 2. More specifically, I want to talk about the way a certain plot twist, spoiler alert by the way, has thematically altered the series in a way that I dislike. For those of you living under your respective rocks, You as a Show, adapted from a novel that originally premiered on Lifetime with early renewal for a second season, which was then revoked when literally nobody watched it. It was, however, already partnered with Netflix so that it would premiere on there shortly after its initial run, and golly gee, did it blow up from there. So as of now, it's a Netflix original, and the second season premiered the day after Christmas. The show is co-created by the Supreme Lord of the CW and Sarah Gamble. It stars Penn Badgley, otherwise known as the other Tucker, Woodchuck Todd, and what is your problem, baby? What was I saying? Are you in a bad position? How goes it? Are you okay? I think maybe she wants dinner, but I'm not supposed to feed her for like 2 more hours because she has diabetes. It stars Penn Badgley, otherwise known as the other Tucker, Woodchuck Todd, reigning white boy of the month, and most famously, Gam Gumfrey. Here he plays Joe Will Goldberg Bettelheim, who is initially a stalker but soon graduates to serial killer. In the first season, we follow him following Guinevere Beck, stalking her windows, breaking into her home, stealing her phone, as well as murdering her boyfriend, her best friend, and her. Amidst all that, though, he's real nice to the boy next door, buying him books, killing his mom's abusive boyfriend. Plus, box of teeth in the ceiling aside, he's a really attentive suitor. Like, relationship goals with a little bit of psychopathy on the side, right? Basically, Joe, being our protagonist and narrator, confuses the relationship the audience has with him. On one hand, he's the worst, and we know this, but on the other, he works so hard. The way I see it, this whole series is reminiscent of something like Breaking Bad in the sense that no matter how objectively evil our protagonist becomes, we are conditioned to root for him. Like, yes, he's a menace to society, but he's so often backed into corners. Sometimes he's a vigilante, like a Dexter, and he had a bad upbringing. All of this confusion left me unsure of my opinion of the show for a long time. I couldn't put my finger on what it was they were trying to get across. Were his vigilante moments a critique of the way he saw himself, or genuinely meant to make us align ourselves with him? I was made uncomfortable by the occasional sympathization of his character, never really sure if flashbacks to his past were made so that we would analyze or defend him. I mean, I had to sit on the memory of this show for a long time before I felt confident in liking it, and I do now. When you dig into cast and crew interviews surrounding you, a lot of their intentions can be cleared up and it can make the show better. Turns out we are, as an audience, meant to be sympathizing with Joe, but only in a wait, am I also crazy sort of way.
You may be disturbingly mirroring some of Joe's behavior. Not all of it, but some of it.
Kept saying to my friends, like, oh, I love Joe. And my friends are like, wait, are you writing a different book? Is this the one where the guy, I'm like, no, but he does all these, like, he likes this, he says this, he thinks that. And yes, exactly what we're talking about.
At points, so I also think you're sometimes like, is that romantic? Like, you have to question yourself a little bit. And I think that you have to kind of give him credit because you're like, yeah, I do know a lot of people that have an obsession with somebody they've never met before. So.
No, I think you're right. It points the finger a little bit at the viewer.
I don't see him as a portrayal of a real person. I see him as a representation of the part of us that identifies with him, the part of us that is a troll, the part of us that is victim blaming, the part of us that is privileged and blind. You know what I mean? I think we're meant to identify with him.
Turns out he is supposed to be romanticized, but as a critique of the behavior that's been romanticized in romance genres past.
That a lot of our pop culture sets these sort of cultural standards and definitions of what love and relationships should be like.
Are there discussions about not wanting to romanticize this figure too heavily, but also, of course, make him charming, make him sexy, make him fun, but yeah, not wanting to lean too heavily in one direction?
We discovered you don't really have to lean in, that all of us who grew up on those great love stories, those romantic comedies, we're kind of hardwired to root for the love story. So if you just present a cute meet, as it were, in a bookstore, you're going to want them to be together. If you see them in the first scene, you're going to want them to be together. It turns out even if you see them do what Joe is doing in the trailer. We are, as a culture, very, very quick to look for ways to judge women and forgive men in these stories.
We've been watching rom-coms our whole life and just like accepting it, accepting that that's like
the stranger ends up being
being the right person. The guy who's
yeah.
really mean to you is actually the love of your life.
I mean, really, that's what the show's about. The show is about like how far. Well, I think the log line when it was on Lifetime was how far are you willing to go for love. But I was always like, no, that's not.
Ooh.
That's not what that is.
This is not love. This is not love.
To me, it's like, how far are we willing to go to forgive an evil white man? And he's just completely obsessive and compulsive and believing that he's operating by the logic of a true romantic. And I think so what he does is he takes the tropes that we've seen in romantic comedies, movies and shows I've been a part of, and many of my colleagues, you know what I mean? And it totally subverts them by actually following them closely, and he comes to this like really kind of terrifying conclusion. It's a little bit of a meta progression of Dan Humphrey. Just now he's murdering people, and now no one can get enough of him. Why is that? Why are we so attracted to murderous people?
Joe is a dramatized manifestation of the media-made expectation that the guy should always get the girl if he just works hard enough. In Sarah Gamble's own words, the point of the show is to pull back the veneer of sparkly romantic heroism and just lay bare how forked up the thinking is around how men should be to women. It exists as a meta-commentary of the romance genre, and in the first season, I think they were totally successful at that. Everything the cast and crew have said they were trying to get across came across to me. Season 2, however, despite maintaining entertainment value, kind of throws a wrench in all of this theming. Now, before I dive into my problems with this season, I should clarify that I still liked it a lot, actually. I watched it all in a day, not in order to critique it, but for no other reason than that I enjoyed it. They maintained the tone of season 1 while giving us an entirely new cast of characters in an entirely new setting. Most of the qualities that kept me watching season 1 are still present. I don't hate this season at all. I just have one pretty big problem with it. That we gloss over the fact Joe built himself an identical kidnapping pin to the last one. I'm kidding, I have a different big problem, but that actually did annoy me a little bit more than it should have. My big problem is that love also being a psychotic killer undermines all of those thematic intentions we just talked about. This is a complicated problem to have because despite having it, I still recognize a lot of value in this plot twist. It doesn't lend itself to the original commentary, but it does to others. Like, she's essentially meant to be Joe's match, a female version of himself, yet when he finds this out, he doesn't love her anymore. Interesting. A concept. This reveal also made Love's character a whole lot more dynamic, to me at least. Early in the season, I was disappointed with the portrayal of her character because she was too perfect. She was only flawed in the sense that other people around her were flawed. Like a human manifestation of all those tweets that say, my toxic trait is having too big of a heart and that like I do things for people they would never do for me. Something I really appreciated in season 1 was the dimension of Beck. We saw her through Joe's eyes and then as she was, which actually allowed her to be more realistic than female characters usually are. She's continuously pegged as mediocre, and this might sound weird, but to me that was super refreshing for a female character to just kind of be trying her best. Love in the beginning of this season seemed more like the cliche, perfectly imperfect, as she says, love interest.
You know why this is happening? Because while I was seeing you, really seeing you, you were busy gazing at a goddamn fantasy. A perfectly imperfect girl.
Turns out she had that vibe for a reason. It was a facade. I think, and I'm pretty sure that the show draws parallels to this on purpose, that her character is reminiscent of Amy from Gone Girl. Like in a lot of ways. There's a lot to be said about this plot twist. There's a lot that's good about this plot twist. I actually thought that I liked it at first, until I slept on it and realized that I hate it. This is for 2 reasons. The first of which is less important, so I'll start with it. It's not very good at being a plot twist. Don't get me wrong, it did shock me, but because it didn't make sense. I think the generally agreed upon rubric for a good plot twist is being unpredictable, but still sensical upon reveal. If you do some mental gymnastics with Love's narrative, then this can be the case. If you explain away a lot of her counterproductive behavior as being part of some grand manipulative scheme, like Love broke up with Joe after finding out his real identity, despite not having a problem with it because she wanted to maintain her facade with him, and taking him back so easily would have been suspicious. Similarly, she cried to her friends about how she wanted to take him back but was unsure if she could trust him, so that they would coax her into it, which would make it less shocking when she eventually did take him back, which was her plan. She dated Milo while in love with a willing Joe to coax the crazy side out of him, and just hoped that he would do exactly what she anticipated at every turn. She acted surprised when she found Joe and Candace in the storage unit and lured Candace away for a hallway murder as opposed to within that room for theatrics, I suppose. To spare Joe's virgin eyes the sight of blood? I guess I think that there are one too many scenes that misguide us in bad faith. To buy this plot twist without feeling betrayed by the narrative that they've shown us, you have to accept the fact that Love is a method actor who's playing 4D chess. And that's not a ridiculous perspective to have, by the way. That's, I think, what they're going for. So if you think that that's if that makes sense to you, then that's fine. This is why I say it not being a good plot twist is less important than my other issue, because it's super debatable in the end. The primary issue I take with the plot twist, as I've said, is thematic inconsistency. So, if the point of the show is to pull back the veneer of sparkly romantic heroism and just lay bare how forked up the thinking is around how men should be to women, if You is a case study dedicated to how far we're willing to go to forgive a white man, if Joe is an exaggerated version of a cliched male romantic interest, then why Love? Trying to force her narrative into any of these ideas is shockingly difficult. All of these ideas are reliant on the fact that men are more likely to be violent and aggressive towards women than the other way around. That does not automatically mean that any story displaying female abuse is not worth displaying. Obviously, they are. The issue is that this show exists to lay bare how forked up the thinking is around how men should be to women, not the other way around. I know I'm really harping on that one specific quote, but like as you saw earlier, all of the interviews coincide with that sentiment. I do realize that not every character or arc in a story, especially for a long-form TV show like this, has to correlate to the primary theme. The issue isn't that Love being a psychotic killer doesn't just not lend itself to the main themes, but that it actively rebuttals them. If we are meant to be analyzing the ways in which media's portrayals of men have normalized and romanticized stalker-like behavior towards women, then what does Love, not a man, behaving in the exact same way as this manifestation in the narrative, say about that analysis? That it's not true. That this behavior is not a result of media's portrayal of men or rape culture or toxic masculinity or gender roles in general. That it's a result of childhood trauma, and that's like a whole different thing. What I'm getting at here is that if the show wanted Love to be Joe's match in a way that did not retaliate against their own intentions and theme, then what they should have done was base her not solely off of Joe, not make her a mirrored image of Joe, but instead a manifestation of women's toxic roles in romance. Examples of these tropes would be, I can fix him, I'm not like other girls, I will not accept this amazing opportunity and stay here for you, instead. I will dump my well-meaning workaholic boyfriend for my high school pal because it's Christmas. Okay, that one's not really applicable to you, but come on, Hallmark, stop it. Love Actually does briefly mention the I can fix him thing.
When you pulled away, I told myself I can fix him. For a while it was working.
But she's mostly referring to the fact that he is not yet wanting to date her and not like his abusive behavior, which would be more like what I would consider what the trope entails regularly. Like, imagine if the plot twist wasn't that she was also a psycho killer in the same fashion as him, but that she was willing to take him back after finding out about his crimes against women because she believes that he will change for her, and then she helps cover up his crimes, leaving her whole life behind to run away with him, again because she thinks that she can fix him. Now that's a critique of women's role in romance tropes, which would be a more accurate match to Joe that didn't undermine Joe's purpose in the story. Does that make sense? I guess that's all I have to say. There are just some jumbled thoughts I want to express, and I'm not completely decided about anything, so go ahead and tell me what you think, and I might change my mind. While I'm telling you what to do, you should follow me on Twitter and Instagram. That is all.